Chapter 7. I go dog skiing. The fun started with clean-up from the kibble and chicken massacre. We did the best we could, though I wished we had hazmat suits and maybe a fire hose. By the time I staggered back into the great room, I wasn't much in the mood for my own dinner. That was just as well. Hukuba and Gale had another idea. They were both standing by the front door, holding their leashes in their mouths. Fine, I told them, but we're not going all the way to Pennsylvania. Annabeth and I have school tomorrow. I expected the animals to pout. Instead, they went bonkers with excitement. Gale chittered and ran in circles, dragging her heavy metal harness behind her. If there had been a chicken carcass in the room, I imagine she would have eviscerated it out of sheer joy. Hukuba stood on her hind paws like she was feeling the Holy Spirit at a Sunday revival. Then she went into play bow and barked with such force it rattled the candelabra. Annabeth helped me get Hukuba's collar on her. No matter the dog, Annabeth loved all of them. The bigger and scarier the better. When it came to my own hellhound buddy, Mrs. O'Leary, I found this heartwarming. When Annabeth acted so casual around Hukuba, it was just worrying. Grover spent a few minutes sweet-talking Gale, trying to calm her so he could put on her harness. That's a good polecat. So much prettier than a skunk or a vole. Such a lovely mustelid. Gale farted, which I guess was a sign they were bonding. At last, we had both animals on their leashes. Annabeth held Hukuba's, which had a bar handle on the end like a water-skiing rope. Grover took charge of Gale, who wrapped up his legs like a mummy as she raced around his hooves, ready to rock and roll. Good to go? I asked once Grover had disentangled himself. Good to go, Annabeth agreed. We were definitely not good to go. As soon as I opened the front door, Hukuba tore down the sidewalk, dragging Annabeth behind her. Gale did her best to keep up, forcing Grover into a brisk jog. I started to bolt after them. Then the door knockers yelled, "Lock the door! No, leave the door open! And Crêpe Suzette!" I raced back inside, grabbing the keys, then locked up and ran after my friends, who were now disappearing up Lexington Avenue. The only things that saved Annabeth from being dragged to death were her own fast feet and the fact that Hukuba was a sprinter, not a marathoner. The oversized Labrador would race a block, stop to smell a trash can, race another block, look back to see if Annabeth had been killed in traffic, sniff another trash can, and so on, because life is short. You have to take time to stop and smell the trash cans. I caught up with them at 30th and Lex, 9 blocks north of the manse. By this point, Gale was taking a break on board the Satyr Express. She was cheerfully perched on Grover's head, gnawing on his left horn while he tried to coax her down without much luck. I wondered if mortal passers-by saw the polecat, or if they thought Grover was just talking to himself and having a really bad hair day. Annabeth's braids had come undone, like she'd just been through a wind tunnel. She had now new stains on her shirt, new rips in her jeans, and a skinned left knee. My turn? I gestured to the leash. She handed it over. Running shoes, she gasped, nodding toward her flats. Tomorrow, I bring running shoes. Woof! Hukuba must have liked the word running. I had just enough time to grab the ski handle before she yanked me into a full-out sprint. By the time we got to East 80th, I was sweating, out of breath, and in total agreement with Annabeth about running shoes. While Hukuba deposited a Niagara Falls of pee on a manhole cover in the middle of the street, Grover trotted up to me, his polecat friend chattering happily on top of his head. Doing okay? He asked me. I wanted to comment that not all of us had goat hooves for running, but I didn't have enough air in my lungs. I just gave him a thumbs up. Then Hukuba took off again. As my muscles turned to putty, my mind started to wander. I realised that I'd never actually walked Mrs. O'Leary. We'd played together and romped around, but whenever we needed to travel, we did so through her shadow teleportation power, which made her a very handy friend. I wondered if Hukuba could do that, or if Hecate had taken away her power with a shadow-ectomy. What would Mrs. O'Leary think of Hukuba? Something told me they would not have a meet-cute. With Mrs. O'Leary, I'd never doubted she had the soul of a dog, an ancient giant supernatural dog from the underworld, but still a dog. With Hukuba, well, I tried not to look in her eyes for too long. When I did, I saw something worrisome, the echo of a human personality. My friend Hazel had told me that Gale and Hukuba were both human once, back in ancient times. I couldn't recall the details, but it was clear that even after thousands of years, Hukuba still had plots and schemes swirling around in her brain. I didn't know how to deal with that knowledge, other than to hold on tighter to her leash and hope she didn't decide to assassinate me by running in front of the 101 bus. Around 95th Street, the polecat finally took mercy on us. Gale chittered and squeaked, pointing south with her nose. Hukuba huffed, irritated, but she seemed to agree that maybe it was time to go home. You want to take her? I asked Annabeth. No, you're doing great. She'd taken her shoes off a few blocks before. Normally, this wasn't recommended when walking in Manhattan, but she'd developed some nasty-looking blisters on her feet, so I decided not to complain at Hakuba as she towed me back down Lexington. By the time we reached Gramercy Park, I felt like I'd been holding the weight of the sky on my shoulders. I don't mean that figuratively. I've done that. So has Annabeth. It's the worst. I wouldn't have been surprised if my hair got a grey streak again, like it did when I took on Atlas's job. I wondered if that often happened to Greek demigods, and if they had to dye their hair back afterward. Maybe that's why there's a hair dye called Grecian Formula. I might have been getting delirious from oxygen deprivation. In fact, at the corner of Gramercy Park West, I had a hallucination. At the other end of the block, in the shadows between the street lamps, I thought I saw a glowing blue apparition, the figure of a child on a bicycle, pedalling away from us in terror. When I blinked, it was gone. I took another step. Something crunched under my shoe. I looked down. A child-sized pair of eyeglasses lay broken on the pavement. Then they too vanished into mist. "You okay?" asked Annabeth. "Did you see that?" "What?" I wasn't sure how to answer. Hecate's the goddess of ghosts, right? Annabeth frowned. "You think you saw one?" "I'm not sure." "Guys, come on." Grover called from up ahead, blissfully unconcerned. "It's finally time for our dinner." I unlocked the front door, trying to ignore the knockers that were threatening to hex us if we didn't play their guessing game. We wrestled the animals out of their leashes, then headed to the basement kitchen to make our meal. Some greens and trail mix Grover had brought, along with Annabeth's bug-licious bounty from the Black Ant. As I was trying to find the microwave to reheat the Mexican food, I noticed Grover hovering near Hecate's ice cream machine. "Remember, no touchy," I warned him. "Of course not." He sounded offended, maybe because he'd been thinking about doing exactly that. "Not until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, with safety gloves, blah, blah, blah. Think I found the microwave. Oh, wait, it says Easy Curse Oven. Never mind." Once our food was reheated, we made camp in the great room. Grover's bedrolls were surprisingly comfortable, only slightly nibbled by rats, and they didn't smell like rodents at all, more like pine needles and wild mint. In the dim candlelight, I could almost believe in the silver flecks on the ceiling really were constellations in a dark rural sky. If only we'd had a campfire, but I imagined that would have been against city codes. I wondered if Hecate had smoke detectors. If they went off, would they summon the FDNY or some godly brigade of hosers? That sounded like a good job for children of Poseidon. Maybe it was another career path I could look into if college didn't work out. Hakuba and Gale didn't go on to their rooms and fall right to sleep like good pets. Instead, they sat at the edge of our imaginary campfire and watched us as if they'd never seen humans have dinner before. Hakuba's sorrowful eyes followed every bit of food that went into my mouth. I was tempted to throw her my grasshopper toludas, but Hecate had said no treats. So I just picked up my plate, making nom-nom sounds and relying on the dim light to hide the fact that I was avoiding the bug meat. "This is nice," Annabeth said after she'd finished her meal. "I admire your positivity," I said. She nudged my knee. "Oh, come on, seaweed brain. It's not so bad. As far as quests go, this is luxury. We have heat and running water. Speaking of which, I'm going to go find a shower." She got up to do that while Grover and I cleared the dishes. When Annabeth came back, her hair was wrapped in a towel. She'd changed into grey flannel owl-pattern PJs. Her blistered feet were bandaged, and she had a strange smirk on her face. "You guys need to see the bathrooms." Trailed by Hakuba and Gale, we went upstairs to check out the wondrous facilities. Apparently, I'd been right about Hecate magicking them into existence the moment I asked. Not being a plumber or a human, the goddess hadn't remembered how bath fixtures worked, so she'd created a variety of rooms, none of which made much sense. In the first bathroom we visited, the shower worked normally, but the toilet was on the ceiling, the water staying in the bowl in defiance of gravity. "What happens if you flush it?" I wondered. Annabeth laughed. "Percy, I've seen what happens when you mess with plumbing. If you want to try that, wait until I'm out of the room." She put a sticky note on the bathroom door, "Shower OK," just to mark which one we could use. Then she led us to her next discovery. This bathroom was lined in black leather with spiky chrome fixtures. Gale chittered in approval. Grover grunted. "You're right. Metal." The shower came in one temperature, ice cold. The towels were chainmail. "No thanks," I decided. "What about the, Careful," Annabeth warned. She used a plunger to open the toilet lid. Steam billowed out. The water in the bowl bubbled like a stew pot. "It's a boil-it," I said. I grinned, pleased with myself. Hakuba growled. Apparently she didn't appreciate my humour. Annabeth often told me I would make a great dad because I already had the right jokes. Stupid, corny, and stupid. We spent a few more minutes exploring the wonders of Hekate's bathrooms. We managed to locate 3 working toilets that would not kill us, and 2 working showers, along with a bathtub that was a working koi pond. Grover assured us that would suffice for him as long as the fish didn't mind. Once we'd all gotten ready for bed, we gathered again in the great room. The polecat and the hellhound cuddled next to the grand piano, which was almost cute if you could ignore the way Hecuba bared her fangs while she slept, and Gale's gas problems. Good first day, Grover sighed. Gotta get easier from here, right? 3 seconds later, he was snoring. I hoped this might give me some time to talk to Annabeth. I was worried about the strange apparition I'd seen in front of the building, the fleeing child, the broken glasses. I was worried about leaving Grover alone tomorrow with magical strawberry ice cream while we went to school. And I was worried about the hellhound and the polecat chewing my face while I slept. But Annabeth must have been exhausted too. She nestled into her rat-recycled bedroll and was out like a torch. Me, I stayed up for a while, staring at the speckled constellations on the ceiling. I thought about Grover's comment that things had to get easier. The problem was, in Percy world, things never got easier, only weirder. Chapter 8. Guess what, weasel butt? We got up at way too early a clock, thanks to the hellhounds and polecats' growling stomachs. We fed them breakfast, threw the eels some dead fish, and coaxed Hecuba into swallowing her 7 million vitamin McNuggets. Then we enjoyed the wonders of Hecate's anti-gravity showers and enchanted toilets before heading to the kitchen, where I got dog hair in my orange juice and a weasel butt in my cereal bowl. Polecat butt, whatever. Grover suggested a daily walking schedule for the pets. He figured there should always be at least 2 of us on leash duty. Every morning he and I could escort Annabeth down to SOD NYC. Then, in the afternoon, he and Annabeth would meet me with the pets at AHS, and we'd walk to the manse together from Astoria. My school was a lot further away than Annabeth's, but I didn't mind the plan if she didn't. I was just happy to spend extra time with her and Grover, even if it involved being dragged across town by our new fuzzy supernatural overlords. Grover, what about you? Annabeth asked. That means you're doing all the walking. Oh, I don't mind. Fresh air. You don't see fresh air on a lot of TripAdvisor reviews for Manhattan, but I appreciated Grover's enthusiasm. We packed our stuff for school, got the pets geared up in their heavy metal and Hello Kitty accoutrements, and then headed out to escort Annabeth to SOD NYC. As we locked up, the door knockers told us, 1, to have a great day, 2, we would die in agony, and 3, pork bellies. Honestly, I'd had stranger multiple-choice tests. We were more prepared for Hecuba's and Gale's walking habits this time, so we weren't surprised when Hecuba led us on a series of high-speed, high-terror sprints through traffic, stopping to smell all the things and then pee on them. Annabeth had even found a pair of sneakers in one of Hecate's closets, which seemed to help. I just hoped the shoes didn't end up being cursed. I didn't want Annabeth to accidentally float to the moon or bust out in a fit of Irish line dancing. As for Gale, we found out she had a strange affinity for drugstores. Every time we passed one, the polecat tried to tug Grover inside. Maybe she realised she needed some anti-gas medicine in the worst way, or maybe Duane Reade was having a sale on chicken carcasses. By the time we reached SOD NYC, I was feeling almost optimistic about our chances of surviving through Halloween. We were laughing and having fun, which I'll take any Tuesday morning of a school week. It felt good, almost domestic. Just 3 besties and their magical rent-a-pets enjoying life. I didn't say anything because that would jinx it, but we could totally make it to Friday night, right? Have a good day at school, dear, I told Annabeth. Thanks, Mum. She gave me a big wet kiss. You guys and your public displays of affection, Grover grumbled. On cue, Annabeth and I got on either side of him, wrapped him in a hug, and kissed him on either cheek with a big mwah. Much better, he muttered, blushing hard. See you this afternoon, Annabeth told us, handing me Hecuba's leash. I wished her borrowed sneakers could magically grow bigger to fit me, but no such luck. Then she was off. Grover and I headed back toward the manse. We had some trouble on 3rd Avenue when Hecuba decided to attack a Lil Zeus Greek food cart, but I managed to pull her off before she killed the cook or devoured the meat supply. Dude wasn't too happy. He yelled something in Greek at me, maybe please control your rhinoceros, but I couldn't be too mad at Hecuba. For one thing, the food smelled good. For another, anything labelled Zeus sent me into attack mode too. Back at Gramercy Park, I realised I had about 20 minutes to make the 40-minute trip to school. Fortunately, my first period teacher was pretty lax about attendance. You sure you'll be okay? I asked Grover at the front door, once the pets were safely back inside. Oh yeah, his eye twitched. I got a ton to do. Going to send out the party invitation for Friday, play with the animals, maybe bake a cake. We'll pick you up at AHS. Then we can have a nice walk home over the Queensborough Bridge. Okay, I said. Don't forget to put the ice cream potion stuff in the freezer. I know, I'll be fine. Okay, thanks, bye. He closed the door. He'll do well, one of the door knockers assured me. He'll ruin everything, said the other. Rainforest Cafe, said the third. Probably nothing to worry about. It wasn't until I got to the subway that I realised I wasn't sure which door knocker had said that Grover would ruin everything, the truth teller or the liar. I tried to put it out of my mind. Grover was smart. He was responsible. He'd been my protector for years, and we'd both grown wiser over that time. I knew I could trust him to do the right thing. I made it to school late enough for the secretary to give me a disappointed sigh, but not late enough to get a full scolding. I considered that a win. On the way to class, I saw my counsellor, Eudora, again. She was creeping down the hall on tiptoe. When she spotted me, she froze like a polecat in headlights. Is she gone? She stage whispered. You mean Hecate? She can't see me. She dove into the nearest room and locked the door behind her. I waited to see if she would come back out, since she'd just shut herself in the janitor's closet. She didn't. I was already late, so I decided to keep going. At some point, though, I was going to have to find out why the Nereid was so terrified of Hecate. I mean, aside from the obvious reason that the goddess was terrifying. My classes went okay. I hadn't done my homework, but that wasn't unusual. Back in August, my stepdad Paul had tried to help me organise my schoolwork when he saw that it was way too much for me to keep straight on my own. He suggested I think of homework as triage. Look at your assignments like they're wounded patients, he'd said, and handle them in order of severity. Okay, you need immediate attention, or you'll die. You can wait a bit, or you aren't that bad. Go home, take some aspirin, and call me tomorrow. I gave my homework a lot of aspirin. Paul's system worked most of the time. I could usually tell which projects were important and which ones my teachers had only assigned because they felt they had to, and they didn't want to grade any more than I wanted to do them. Having a teacher in the family can be handy. I was feeling pretty good by the end of the school day. I hadn't failed my quizzes. I hadn't fallen asleep. Miraculously, my history teacher said, "Very good, Mr. Jackson," when I answered a question, which was probably a sign she was actually a monster, but I wasn't going to judge unless she attacked me. Some of my best friends are monsters. After swim practice, I waited in front of AHS, my hair still smelling of chlorine. I was looking forward to seeing my friends, even Hakuba and Gale. That's the weird thing about pets, I guess. Even when they're a total pain, they still manage to burrow their way into your heart. I kept looking down 37th Avenue, expecting a huge hellhound to come barrelling over the horizon, possibly dragging Annabeth on roller skates. 20 minutes passed. For an ADHD guy like me, that translated into about 40 Percy hours. Maybe Grover and Annabeth had gotten stuck in a traffic jam, walking across the river to Queens. Maybe the pets had pulled them off course to Hackensack. It could be nothing. Having no cell phone is something I'd gotten used to. Yes, it sucked not to be able to look things up quickly, scroll through funny videos, or text my friends to see where they were, but none of my friends could have cell phones either, so it didn't matter much. Plus, watching cats ride Roombas or frat dudes failing at backflips is cool, but not worth getting eaten by monsters. Every year or so I borrowed a mortal cell phone to see if the magic had worn off or gotten weaker. If maybe I could use a cell phone now without causing a great monster migration and a kill Percy rodeo. Every year the experiment failed. Once I touched the phone screen, the average time until a monster showed up was 36 seconds. Long story short, I had no way of knowing where Grover and Annabeth were. Iris messages only work in certain situations, like I said before, and if the person you're trying to reach is moving, for instance being dragged across the tri-state area by a hellhound, an iris message often won't connect. So I waited. After an hour I started to panic. If something had happened to Annabeth and Grover and I was just standing here not helping, if they'd been swallowed by Janet and her gang of moray eels, or if the manse had exploded from a build-up of polecat gas. I took out Riptide. With the tip of the blade I etched a message on the sidewalk. Went to Gramercy. That was another trick I'd learned in the last month. One day when I was bored, sitting on a sidewalk while my mum shopped for clothes for her first author signing, I discovered that Riptide could sketch glowing lines on asphalt that no regular mortals could see. The markings lasted about 3 hours before fading away, less if it rained. It made me wonder why I'd ever seen celestial bronze graffiti around from other demigods. Why had I never seen it? Maybe they'd never gotten bored enough to try it, or maybe their weapons didn't have a side hustle as writing utensils. I began walking back to Manhattan, taking the route I figured Annabeth and Grover would take, so I would intercept them if they were still coming my way. I still hadn't met them when I got to the Upper East Side. By the time I reached East 60th, I was so concerned I started to jog. I was still a long way to Gramercy Park, with crosswalk lights that didn't cooperate and plenty of cars and pedestrians to navigate. I got honked at, cursed at, scowled at, and almost creamed a few times by motorised delivery bikes. But I am a native New Yorker. Such obstacles barely slowed me down. A block out, I spotted Annabeth running toward the manse from the opposite direction. A chunk of ice formed in my stomach. Apparently, Grover hadn't come to pick her up either. We met in front of the house. "You okay?" she asked. "Fine. You?" "Yeah, but I guess I lost track of time studying. Grover never showed. I thought maybe he fell asleep, or..." Her voice faltered when she looked at the mansion. Oh, gods. I was so anxious I had troubling focusing through the mist. When the facade of Hecate's house finally revealed itself, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The front windows were all broken, their shattered glass strewn across the garden as if the panes had been busted from within. Several tombstone tiles had fallen off the walls. Blue smoke billowed from the front porch, where the massive 3-panelled door had exploded outward, like someone had hit it with a battering ram from the inside. "Grover," we both said at once, and we ran into the disaster zone. Chapter 9. The apocalypse smells like strawberries. Somewhere under the wreckage of the front door, the animal-headed knockers were moaning. In pain. Since they were made of metal, I figured they could wait. Inside, our campsite was smouldering. The blue smoke was coming from some broken vials that had gotten mixed in with our now shredded bedrolls. The benches had been reduced to kindling. The piano was flipped upside down. On the side walls, the stained glass windows had been smashed, revealing nothing behind them but brick walls. The stairs were littered with heaps of fur and splatters of pink that I really hoped weren't blood. An attack? I wondered aloud. My heart dragged like an anchor. If we'd left Grover alone and he'd gotten besieged by a Hecate-hating horde of monsters, I would never forgive myself. I don't think so. Annabeth's voice quavered as she snuffed out the bedrolls with wet towels. Those windows, the doors, everything looks like it was busted from the inside. I knelt by the stairs and picked up a tuft of hair. This looks like goat fur. And this pink stuff. Annabeth came up next to me. She had a stronger stomach than I did. She dabbed her finger in the sticky liquid and sniffed it. Strawberry. We ran for the kitchen. The place looked like the set of the Great Chainsaw Bake-Off season finale. Hecate's bubbling pots had been swept off the stove, splattering magical stew everywhere, painting the cabinets, encrusting the appliances, streaking the ceiling with multicoloured chunks and goo. It smelled just as bad as it sounds. Some of the goo must have been acidic. It steamed as it ate through the floor tiles. The refrigerator looked like someone had taken a wrecking ball to it. The oven door was ripped off its hinges. Vials and beakers from Hecate's cabinets had been disgorged and shattered. And lying in the middle of all this chaos was a mountain of hairy flesh, snoring with gusto, its 2 massive shaggy legs propped against the kitchen island, its moose-sized hooves pointing toward the ceiling. I edged backward. What is that? It's... Annabeth made a strangled yelp. Oh, gods. Grover. I must have heard her wrong. Grover didn't come in XXXL size. He didn't shake buildings when he snored, and he would never disrespect a kitchen full of food like this. But when I stood alongside Fur Mountain, I realised that shreds of Grover's shirt clung to its shoulders. Its body was enormous and almost entirely goatish, but if I squinted and used my imagination, I could almost make out Grover's face, incredibly overinflated, as if he'd had the worst allergic reaction ever. What do we do? I stammered. I hoped Annabeth had a plan. Children of Athena always had a plan, but she looked as bewildered as I felt. Maybe we should get him to camp, she said. I've never seen anything like. Fur Mountain groaned. His gut rumbled, and though it was 10 times louder than usual, I recognised the warning sound. Hit the deck! I ducked and covered as Fur Mountain unleashed the belch, heard round the world. A strawberry-scented shockwave rolled across the kitchen, rattling appliances and knocking over the few beakers that hadn't yet been broken. When I dared to look back up, Grover's body had deflated to near normal size. His upper half was mostly human again. His face popped back into shape like an anti-dent car hood, but he still seemed to be out cold. Annabeth staggered to the nearest sink. She filled a cup and threw cold water in Grover's face. Blah! Grover's eyes fluttered open. He tried to sit up, yelped in pain and lay down again. My head! Why is everything so bright? Why? He tented his hands over his mouth. His eyes widened. Oh no, Then he curled into a fetal position and began to cry. "Hey, man." I patted his shoulder. I couldn't tell him everything was okay. Clearly it wasn't, but I tried my best. "We're here for you. Do you remember what happened?" "The milkshake," he whimpered. I locked eyes with Annabeth. I'd kind of guessed, given the strawberry scent of this apocalyptic wasteland. Still, I had to fight the urge to yell, "Dude, you had one job!" First, that wasn't true. We'd left Grover in charge of an entire haunted house, and I'd known in the depths of my worst-case scenario heart that the milkshake experiment was going to be a problem. Second, Grover already felt terrible enough. "I didn't mean to," he sobbed. "I was moving it into the freezer like I was supposed to. Then the lid popped open and that aroma. The next thing I knew..." "Let's get you cleaned up," Annabeth said, taking his arms. "No, the pets," Grover yelped. "Check the pets." Annabeth cursed. I hadn't thought of the pets either, but with the front doors busted open, did that count as letting them out? I prayed Grover had left their leashes on, so they could still be spellbound to stay at the house. We left Grover and raced through the mansion, calling out for Gale and Hakuba. Maybe Hakuba was taking a nap. Maybe Gale was attacking her chicken carcasses. But I remembered how grumpy they'd looked when Hecate had talked about their accessories being ensorcelled to keep them inside, and how much they loved their walks. No lock on the first floor. We bounded upstairs. The second floor seemed to have been spared any damage from Grover's goat Hulk rampage, but there was no sign of the pets. Annabeth ran to check the back rooms. I stopped at the moray tank. "Where'd they go? The hellhound and the polecat?" "I ate them," said Janet. "What?" "She's kidding," said Fortunato, because I guess moray eels are huge jokers. As soon as the doors busted open, both ran out. "Can we eat them when you bring them back?" "No." "Can we eat the satyr?" "No." I rendezvoused with Annabeth at the entrance to the library. "Nothing," she reported. "The eels say Gale and Hakuba left. They're in the wild." I gestured vaguely toward Midtown, which is about as wild as it gets. Annabeth took a deep breath. I guessed she was counting to 10, trying to find her Athena Zen logical happy place that would keep her from screaming. "First things first, let's check on Grover." Back in the kitchen, the satyr was slowly returning to normal. His left horn was still too big, curled like a nautilus shell. His right bicep was the size of a watermelon. He was splattered head to hoof with sticky pink goo, but otherwise he looked like regular old Grover, now with 95% more strawberry flavour. "How bad is it?" he asked. I told him. There was no use sugarcoating it, especially since he was already sugar-coated. He put his face in his hands and groaned. "I've ruined everything, and it's only Tuesday." "We'll figure it out," Annabeth said, though she didn't sound confident. "Grover, we have to track down the animals. We're going to need your talents for that. Can you stand?" This was a smart move, enlisting Grover to help, making him feel like he was part of the solution. Why hadn't I thought of it? Probably because I was so angry at him. I kept telling myself I shouldn't blame my best friend for what had happened. I was the one who'd left him alone in the house after all. Even Annabeth had contributed to the situation by losing track of time at school. Still, despite those realizations, I was shaking with rage. Annabeth must have seen it. "Percy, why don't you go get the leashes?" she said. "We'll meet you at the front door." "Good idea," I said, and off I went. My brain was full of static. My hands felt numb. I didn't realise I'd grabbed Gale's harness until the spikes started biting into my palm. I snatched up Hakuba's leash and then headed for the front door. I remembered Hecate's triple-headed form in the principal's office. I'd been threatened by a lot of gods over the years. With Hecate it hit differently. Beyond the usual "obey me now" bluster. Maybe it was because Hecate had power over the mist. Something about her made me doubt my own sanity. Like perhaps all goddesses were supposed to have 3 different faces at once. Perhaps toilets should be on the ceiling. Perhaps polecats were different than weasels. It felt like if she punished me for wrecking her house, and even worse, losing her beloved pets, I wouldn't just die. I would be dissolved, rewritten, erased from reality. I would doubt myself right out of existence. She could control what mortals saw and what they thought. That was basically the same as controlling who they were. The idea terrified me. It made me want to crawl into eels' tanks and hide. I guess that's why I felt so angry. I couldn't let myself get dissolved into the mist, and I definitely couldn't let that happen to Grover or Annabeth. "There is nothing wrong with your sight," Hecate's voice whispered in my mind, but I wasn't sure if it was real, or a dream, or a haunted memory. I stood in the shattered doorway, looking down the cranium brick path toward Gramercy Park. For a moment I saw the ghostly blue image on the bicycle again, fleeing as fast as a child could pedal. There now, that's better. Hecate's laughter echoed through the foyer. How could she be laughing, I wondered, in the face of all this mess? Could she not see it? "Percy." Annabeth touched my shoulder and I nearly jumped out of my sneakers. Yeah, I said. We ready? Annabeth pointed toward Grover, who was leaning against the wall, trembling like he had just thrown up. I can try, he said. I can... His knees buckled. I managed to catch him before he face-planted on the carpet. Whoa, okay, I said. You're not going anywhere. G-Man, you need to rest. But the first 24 hours are critical, he murmured. In missing animal cases, we need to... Oh. He slumped against me, all his energy sapped. He'd gone from being Fur Mountain, destroyer of worlds, to a paper satyr who weighed almost nothing in my arms. Let's get you sitting down, I said. Then I remembered that all the furniture in the great room was broken. Our bedrolls were half burned from magical chemicals. Annabeth and I made a nest out of our spare clothes and eased Grover onto the floor. I'll be okay in a minute, he said. He kneeled over sideways and started to snore. Annabeth and I stood over him. The house was quiet, except for the cries of the buried door-knockers and the eels in their tank, singing the Gollum song about fish in 4-part harmony. Pretty sure Grover will recover, Annabeth ventured. You think he's right about the 24-hour thing? I asked. She made a listless, one-shoulder shrug. I don't know. Sounds like something he heard on Unsolved Murders, but I do think we need to get out of there. I stared down at Grover. A pitiful, strawberry-frosted lump of unhappiness, whimpering in his sleep. A cold feeling of certainty settled over me, the kind I usually get when I'm about to do something necessary and potentially fatal. I'd been wrong to leave Grover alone before and put him in this position. I needed to fix it. You stay with him, I told Annabeth. I'll track down the pets, starting with Hakuba. Annabeth frowned. Won't you need help? I tried not to feel like she was doubting my abilities the way I was doubting my abilities. I'll have help, I assured her. It's time to use a hellhound to catch a hellhound. I'm calling in Mrs. O'Leary. Chapter 10. I catch a nope. That sounded real impressive when I said it. Then I actually had to do it. Calling Mrs. O'Leary didn't always work. Sometimes she was too far away to sense me. Sometimes she was busy doing something else, like digging holes in the underworld or chewing on a juicy dracon bone. Years ago, Daedalus had left her in my care, but these days she was her own person. She did what she wanted. If I thought about her hard enough, though, she might show up. If that didn't work, I'd need incentives. I grabbed some treats from Hakuba's stash. If those failed me, I'd have to go with my last resort. On my keychain, I kept a dog whistle that Leo Valdez had given me. It wasn't made of Stygian's ice like my first one. That had shattered. This one was celestial bronze and engraved with Leo and Percy forever, because Leo is a doofus. I tried not to blow that whistle unless I really had to. The second thing I would need, lots of open space. Mrs. O'Leary usually got excited when she saw me. We didn't need to wreck the mansion any more than we already had. I grabbed Hecate's keys, walked across the street and unlocked one of the gates to Gramercy Park. I expected a chorus of billionaire angels to start singing when I opened it, but the only sound was the creak of rusty hinges. Inside, spoiler alert, there were trees. Also shrubs, gravel paths and benches like a lot of neighbourhood parks in New York. Nothing was gilded in 24-karat gold. No diamonds or rubies decorated the flower beds. I wanted there to be a sign on the path welcoming new visitors. Are you not underwhelmed? In the middle of the park stood the statue of a sad-looking old-timey dude, the name Edwin Booth engraved at his feet. I didn't know why Edwin looked so depressed. Maybe he'd lost his hellhound. Anyway, I had the park to myself, so I figured it would be a safer place to call Mrs. O'Leary rather than on the corner of 3rd Avenue, where she might trample a taxi. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my anxiety about Hecate obliterating me. I focused on Mrs. O'Leary. Come here, girl. Silence. No rustling in the shadows, no disturbance in the force. Just me and Edwin Booth standing by ourselves, looking sad. I held up my bag of doggy goodies and tried again. Treaty treats. Still nothing. I wondered if Mrs. O'Leary was at Camp Jupiter in California, where she usually hung out these days. If so, she was probably romping around the field of Mars, playing with her buddy Hannibal the elephant. I felt bad about calling to her, expecting her to shadow travel all the way across the country. That took a lot of energy. If she got here at all, she might arrive too tired to help me. Then I'd end up with a massive snoring pile of cuteness. But I really needed her help. Reluctantly, I got out my whistle. I blew it. I couldn't hear anything because of the high-pitched sound waves or whatever, but the whistle's inscription lit up in rainbow colours. Leo and Percy forever. As I may have mentioned, Leo is a doofus. I thought I was ready for what would happen next. Somehow, it still surprised me. A gust of wind ripped through the park, kicking up funnel clouds of leaves. The tree branches swayed, their shadows wove together across the gravel path, turning into a pool of darkness, and out of that darkness burst Mrs. O'Leary. A wall of furry black canine crashed into me, knocking me to the ground. She slathered me with kisses, which was like being wrapped in a wet sandpaper-textured sleeping bag. I made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a crushed grunt. "Okay, girl," I said. "I missed you too." Thankfully, she always knew when it was time to stop, so I didn't suffocate or die from a collapsed rib cage. When I got to my feet, I was covered in dog drool and fur, but I was grinning. I'd missed my dog. Yes, I wanted to go to New Rome University to be with Annabeth, no doubt about that, but I also felt like part of my heart was already there. I had good friends among the Roman demigods. My half-brother Tyson lived there, and Mrs. O'Leary spent most of her time at Camp Jupiter. She liked the food in the mess hall. She liked the elephant. She liked the whole package. Maybe I should write an application essay about that. I want to go to your university because my dog lives there, or maybe not. Mrs. O'Leary gave me one more sloppy kiss across the side of my face. Then she started to sniff me, inhaling every scent I had accumulated since we'd last seen each other. She didn't seem pleased with my life choices. She backed up, shook her head indignantly, and barked. Woof! Probable translation. Have you been seeing other hellhounds? It's Hecuba, I explained. Hecate's dog. We're just dog-sitting, and she got away. I opened my backpack and pulled out Hecuba's leash. Mrs. O'Leary recoiled as soon as the scent hit her nose. She gave me a wounded stare. I know, I said. She's not nearly as wonderful as you, but I really need you to help find her. Mrs. O'Leary growled. Why would I want to find her? I interpreted. Well, if I don't, Hecate will kill me, and Grover, and Annabeth. Mrs. O'Leary snorted. I read this as, You are a marvel of foolishness, Percy, but fine, I'll help you. She snuffled at the leash, sniffed the air, and then bounded off through the park. I was hoping it would be a short chase. Maybe Mrs. O'Leary would lead me to the nearest corner, and we'd find Hecuba asleep behind a bush. Of course, it wasn't that easy. Mrs. O'Leary leapt the fence. She raced off down East 20th, bounding over the tops of cars like they were convenient stepping stones. I wasn't as good at navigating obstacles, but I did my best to keep up, because I really didn't want to lose 2 hellhounds in the same evening. Unlike Hecuba, Mrs. O'Leary was laser-focused. She didn't stop to pee on trash cans or assault food truck vendors. She just kept running, pausing only long enough to sniff the pavement and confirm she was on the right trail. Yeah, I thought, this is going to work. That's usually what I say just before something doesn't work. I followed Mrs. O'Leary west for a few blocks, and then south, and then west again. Finally, she ducked into an alley between a tattoo parlour and a Trader Joe's. When I caught up with her, Mrs. O'Leary was sniffing around a pile of garbage bags, flattened boxes, and empty fruit crates. She was wagging her tail, which seemed weird, given how she'd behaved when she first caught Hecuba's smell. I doubted Mrs. O'Leary would act so happy if she'd really found her. Also, the trash pile she was sniffing wasn't nearly big enough to hide a grown hellhound. I tried to think positive. What you got there, girl? I inched closer. Maybe she'd gotten sidetracked, after all, by some lusciously scented food waste. She did love Trader Joe's pumpkin dog treats, probably because they weren't available in the Camp Jupiter mess hall, and Hades hadn't opened a Trader Joe's in the underworld. Yet. I reached down to move some fruit crates. From somewhere inside the pile, a small voice yelped, Nope! I stumbled backward into a crate of rotten bananas. Mrs. O'Leary didn't look worried, though. Whatever she was smelling, she was curious about it, and excited. The thing in the pile yapped again. Nope! And I realised how small it sounded, how afraid. My heart twisted in a knot. I had a sudden overpowering urge to help the nope yapper. I started clearing away boxes and bags. Mrs. O'Leary guided me, nosing through the trash until we unearthed the source of the yapping. It was a puppy, a hellhound puppy. His black fur was matted with gunk. Flies buzzed around his cherry-red eyes. His ears were back, and he trembled with fear. A nasty-looking cut zigzagged across his back like he'd been attacked by something with claws. I don't cry a lot, but I have to tell you my eyes watered pretty bad. Hey there, I said as softly as I could. Hey, buddy, we're not going to hurt you. I crouched so I wouldn't look so big, which I guess was a kind of pointless thing since Mrs. O'Leary loomed right next to me. It's going to be okay. I hoped my tone would be soothing, but I was choking up so bad I could barely talk. I remembered the stories Tyson had told me about how young cyclopses grew up on the streets, getting harassed by monsters, hiding in alleys, feeling lonely and afraid all the time. I didn't know if it was the same for hell puppies or how this little guy had ended up here. I just knew I had to rescue him. Mrs. O'Leary must have had the same instinct. As soon as she'd picked up his scent, the whole hunting Hecuba mission had gone out the window. I didn't blame her a bit. I rummaged through my bag and pulled out one of Hecuba's treats. I offered it to the puppy, but he flinched when I extended my hand. I broke the treat in half. I put one part on the ground and gave the other to Mrs. O'Leary, just to show the puppy that it was safe to eat. Mrs. O'Leary seemed to understand the situation. She lay down so as not to look threatening. After a few minutes of me just talking calmly and staying put, the puppy inched forward. He sniffed the treat and then wolfed it down. Then he looked at me with those big red eyes like, "More?" We sat there for a long time until the pup was comfortable enough to eat out of my hand. The poor thing had fleas and ticks, and the hair around his eyes had been eaten by mites, so he had a pale mask, kind of like a reverse polecat. He smelled pretty bad too, but underneath the stench of garbage and urine, I could still catch a whiff of new puppy. He couldn't have been more than 6 weeks old. "You want another treat?" I asked him. "Nope," he barked, which apparently meant yes, please. "I'll take the whole bag." I couldn't help but smile. "Is that your name?" "Nope." He tilted his head, maybe thinking about it. "Nope." "Okay then, but that's what I'll call you." He crawled right into my lap. He was heavy, like 50 pounds, and floppy, with ridiculously oversized paws that told me he was going to be a rhino-sized hellhound someday. I scratched behind his ears and kept feeding him treats, letting him get used to the sound of my voice. Meanwhile, Mrs. O'Leary's eyes were starting to droop. Shadow travelling took a lot of energy. Hunting down puppies, also hard work. Now, lying here calmly and hearing my soothing voice, my OG dog was starting to feel the snooze. "It's okay, girl," I told her. "You did great. Get some rest." Mrs. O'Leary grunted. She hauled up her massive body and circled round, making a nest in the flattened cardboard boxes. As soon as she lay down, she dissolved into shadows, leaving nothing but a hellhound-shaped depression. That made me kind of sad. She'd been with me for like 30 seconds and now she was gone again. But like I said before, she's her own person. If she wanted to dissolve into shadows and reappear back at Camp Jupiter, all comfy and cosy in her usual giant doggy bed, who was I to stop her? "Nope," asked the puppy. "I'm not crying," I said, wiping my eyes. The cut on Nope's back looked infected. I could feel his ribs under his fur. Hopefully Grover would know some hellhound first aid. "You want to get out of here?" I asked Nope. "You can meet my friends, have a nice warm place to sleep. We'll get you all better." The puppy half-heartedly licked my hand. He was still trembling, but not as bad as before. I took that as a yes. I knew this wouldn't solve our problems. Hecuba and Gale were still on the loose. The manse was still a wreck. Hecate was still going to incinerate us. In fact, this was the most ADHD move I've ever made in a career of ADHD moves. I'd gone out to find 2 missing pets and was coming home with a different dog instead. But any time you can help a puppy, you should help a puppy. I picked up Nope as gently as I could, draped him over one shoulder like a baby, and started back toward Gramercy Park. Chapter 11. We have pizza with extra tears. "Nope," I said, holding out the dog for Annabeth and Grover to see. Nope was so excited he peed on my shoes. Annabeth moved back out of the splash zone. She looked exhausted. She had a mop in her hand, rubble in her hair, and smears of strawberry ice cream all over her clothes. Grover was standing up now, at least, but he still looked like he'd been punched repeatedly in the stomach. "Adorable pup," Annabeth said, "but I don't think we can pass him off as Hecuba. Where did you find him?" I told them the story while Annabeth mopped up the pee. I guess always being prepared has its disadvantages. When you're the one who happens to be holding the mop, you get to mop. Neither Annabeth nor Grover scolded me for failing to find Hecuba and Gale. Maybe they were just too tired, or maybe they figured we were doomed anyway, so we might as well be doomed with a cute puppy. "Poor little guy," Grover said. "That's a nasty cut on his back." "Nope," barked Nope. "Yeah," Grover agreed. "That's okay." "What did he say?" I asked. "Well, he's just a pup," Grover explained. "He isn't barking in complete sentences yet. Basically, he said, 'I pee on boy. Boy is mine.'" "Makes sense," I said. Anyone else want to hold him?" Annabeth leaned her mop against the wall and came to get the puppy. He squirmed, pushing himself off my chest, apparently anxious to get to his new mama. I didn't blame him. "There we go," Annabeth said, embracing the dark mass of hell fluff. "Who's a good Nope?" The dog licked the side of her face and peed some more. "Okay, we're going to have to work on the bladder control," Annabeth said, "but you're too sweet to get mad at." "Nope," Nope concurred. Annabeth set down the dog and off he went, exploring his new digs. Every time his nose bumped into something that startled him, a chair, a menacing-looking coffee table, he leapt back and barked at it until he was sure it had submitted to his puppy dominance. "Grover, can you get him healed up?" I asked. "I figured you were its best hope." Grover had trouble meeting my eyes. Our emotions had been connected for years, ever since he formed an empathy link with me in the 7th grade. He was well aware of how mad I'd been earlier. I could tell he was still weighed down by a strawberry-scented cloud of guilt. Nevertheless, he seemed to realise I was making a peace offering. "Sure thing," he said. "A little nature magic and a warm bath. He'll be good as new. Come on, Nope." "Nope." He obediently followed Grover toward the kitchen, barking and snapping at the satyr's hooves. I turned to Annabeth. "So, what now?" "That's what I do any time I have a problem I can't solve, which happens like every 60 seconds. I ask Annabeth. She looked down at my pea-soaked shoes and her own splattered clothes. "First, let's get cleaned up. I'll meet you back here in 30 minutes. I must have been pretty tired because I staggered into a bathroom I hadn't seen before, where the shower sprayed sideways at the toilet. I didn't feel like finding another bathroom, so I just willed the water to corkscrew around me and took a tornado shower. It worked out okay, though I did give my hair a swirly that wouldn't come out no matter how much I combed it. We reconvened in the ruins of the great room. I'm not going to say I felt refreshed or more hopeful. When I looked at Hakuba's empty dog bed, Gale's heavy metal harness, and the shattered stained glass windows, I felt a stink hole opening in my stomach, swallowing all my hopes of getting through the week alive. But at least I was clean, and I was with friends. Somehow Annabeth had managed to order pizza. How she'd gotten it delivered to an invisible mansion without the use of a phone app, I don't know. It smelled amazing, though. She was sitting cross-legged on her tattered, half-burned bedroll, chomping on a slice of mushroom and black olive, lying on the floor next to her were the 3 door knockers she'd rescued from the wreckage of the front entrance. They were silent, probably still in shock from losing their purpose in life to a giant rampaging goat monster. As for Grover, he was eating garlic breadsticks. I knew from experience this would make his breath smell putrid for days, but the guy had had a rough afternoon, so I wasn't going to protest. Nope scampered back and forth between Annabeth and Grover, nuzzling for bites and wagging his tail so hard his whole body shook. Grover had done a great job of getting him cleaned up and bandaged. The puppy's fur had puffed out so much he looked like a black underworld dandelion. When Nope saw me, he barked happily, slamming down his front paws in a play bow. I didn't need to be a satyr to understand what he was saying. "Boy, gimme pizza, or I pee on boy again." I got a slice and picked off pieces of pepperoni for him, while he stared at me with those big, sad, hell-spawn eyes. So, I wasn't sure how to follow up that great opener. I wanted to offer an incredible plan for solving all our problems, except I didn't have one. "I guess I can get back out there and search through the night." Annabeth shook her head. "We can't just randomly canvass the city. Hakuba and Gale are magical creatures. They could be anywhere. They might decide to come home on their own, or..." That was a pretty big or. "Or they could terrorise the 5 boroughs and bring death, destruction and polecat gas upon the innocent people of New York. Or they could disappear into the underworld and refuse to ever be found. Or... My eyes drifted up to the balcony, where Hecate's crossed torches were still fixed on the railing. "Maybe we could use those," I said. "This seems like an emergency. They might, I don't know, light a way back home for the pets." Annabeth's frown told me she'd already thought of this and dismissed the idea. "Just a gut feeling? I'd leave those torches alone. They're a serious last resort. They might even alert Hecate that we're in trouble. First, we should try to think our way through this, solve the problem on our own." "Problems, plural," I said. "Missing hellhound, missing polecat, destroyed house." Grover dabbed his tears away with the end of a breadstick. "Guys, don't say it, G-Man," I told him. "Don't apologise. Annabeth's right. We're going to figure this out." He heaved a sigh, possibly because Nope had taken advantage of his distraction and stolen the breadstick. It probably tasted even better seasoned with salty satyr tears. "We all mess up," Annabeth consoled him. "Remember when Percy sent Medusa's head to Mount Olympus? Or when he got a nosebleed and woke up Gaia? Or that time..." "Are you just running down a list of times I messed up?" I asked. Annabeth shrugged. "You're cute when you mess up." That didn't seem to help Grover's mood. He watched listlessly as Nope chewed on his left hoof. "We're all going to die," he sobbed. "We're going to die with a puppy, which is always how I wanted to go, but still..." "Nobody is going to die," Annabeth promised. "We still have 3 days before Hecate comes back." Grover moaned. "You're right. Then we'll die on Halloween with all our friends watching." I took a second to process that. "Wait, you already sent out the party invitations?" "Of course," he said. "This morning, before everything went strawberry, I gave them to the Aura." I imagined dozens of wind spirits carrying Grover's letters to Camp Half-Blood and beyond. Fancy envelopes fluttering into the hands of every demigod we knew. "Join us Friday for a party at Hecate's. Watch us die a painful death. Costumes optional." I sighed. "Grover, it's okay. Annabeth sounded like she was trying to convince herself as much as the rest of us. That just gives us more incentive to fix everything. We know our deadline. We've got work to do. She brushed her hands on her pants and stood up. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling in sick. My spirits lifted. Cool, me too. No, you don't, she said. I'm ahead in my schoolwork. You need to go to class. Aw, I complained. Look, she said, hellhounds usually only roam at night, right? I guess, but Hecate said we should walk them twice during the day. And polecats are naturally nocturnal too, aren't they? She turned to Grover. I think so, he said. Then tomorrow, Annabeth concluded, we can assume the pets will be okay sleeping during the day. They won't be causing trouble. That means I'll have time to hit Hecate's library, learn everything I can about Hecuba and Gale. I know they were both human once. Hecuba was the queen of Troy. Gale, I think she was a witch. Anyway, hopefully I'll find some clues about where they went. Then in the evening, when Percy gets back from school, we can continue the search. Grover sniffled. And I'll spend the day cleaning. He gazed across the destroyed furniture and shattered windows, though that seems hopeless. One problem at a time, Annabeth said. We'll figure this out. I'm not sure she believed that, but I think we both sensed that Grover's present state of mind was a sheet of thin ice. It wouldn't support much weight. Nope kept gnawing on Grover's hoof. Maybe it was his way of trying to help, or maybe he was just teething. Grover didn't seem to mind, but I was kind of worried my friend might wake up in the morning without a left foot. Okay then, I said. I'll go to school tomorrow. At night, we'll hunt for the pets. Nope got tired of gnawing. He yawned, curled up next to Grover and closed his eyes. The pup has the right idea, Grover said. I guess. And just like that, he keeled over and began to snore. I wish I could fall asleep as easily as satyrs and pups. I imagined Grover dreaming of strawberry fields, while Nope dreamed of tasty goat hooves. I glanced at Annabeth. I could see the exhaustion and anxiety on her face. Used to be. When we were younger, she was better at hiding it, or maybe I just didn't know her as well then. We're going to get through this, I said. She looked surprised, me comforting her, kind of switching things up. Yeah, she said. We've overcome worse, right? For sure. I didn't want to say what we were both probably thinking. Eventually our luck has to run out. You can only flip a coin so many times before it comes up tails. You lose. But there was no point in dwelling on that. Instead, I cleaned up the pizza, said goodnight to the eels, and got ready for bed. Wednesday, I would do the heroic thing and go to school. While I was there, maybe I could do more than just catch up on my work. Perhaps I could attempt something that had rarely been tried in a school environment. I could take a stab at learning useful information, something that might actually help us stay alive. Chapter 12. I get schooled by an old friend. First, I tried to find Eudora, my supernatural guidance counsellor. Since she was the Nereid in charge of gifts from the sea, I thought maybe she could supply me with a magical fish that attracted hellhounds, or a pirate's leg bone that acted like a catnip for polecats. I don't know, something. But Eudora was AWOL. Her office was empty. The candy jar on her desk contained no Jolly Ranchers. Bummer. I glanced at Sicky Frog, the purple cartoon wall painting left over from the time when this room used to be an elementary school nurse's office. I get the feeling Eudora is trying to avoid me, I told him. Sicky Frog looked miserable. Why is she so scared of Hecate? I asked. Sicky Frog had no answers. Good talk, I said. Hope you feel better soon. Second idea. I stopped by my history teacher's classroom. Dr. Sharma had her prep period when I had English. Since we were watching a movie that day in English, I figured I could miss a few minutes. Dr. Sharma was pretty cool, and not just because she'd said, "Very good, Mr. Jackson," the day before. She knew a lot about ancient cultures. She'd been bugging me to pick a topic for my paper on forgotten historical figures. I'd been avoiding it, since I'd met so many forgotten historical figures and killed them all. Now, though, maybe I could ask Dr. Sharma what she knew about Hecuba, Queen of Troy. She might be able to tell me something that would help me find the hellhound. If it saved me from breaking my brain against a mountain of history books, all the better. I strolled up to her open doorway and froze when I looked inside. The man who was eating a late breakfast at Dr. Sharma's desk was definitely not Dr. Sharma. His dark hair and beard were flecked with grey. He wore a rumpled tweed jacket, tie and dress shirt, with a flannel blanket over his lap. His old-fashioned wheelchair had hand-pushed steel wheels and well-worn black leather armrests. He held a half-eaten bagel in one hand and a steaming cup of tea in another. I registered all these details with perfect clarity, but somehow I still did not recognise him. The best way I can describe the feeling is like bungee jumping. 1 second you're at the top of a cliff. The next, the river is hurtling towards you. Your senses are screaming on high alert. You see the water, then suddenly it's racing away from you again as you recoil into the air, and you're left halfway between, not sure if you're in two places or at once or nowhere at all. Finally my brain caught up. Mr. Brunner? I stammered. I hadn't called him Mr. Brunner since I was 12 years old, but old habits die hard. Seeing him back behind a teacher's desk after all these years. He glanced over with a smile. A dollop of cream cheese clung to his beard. Percy? Hello, my boy. My mind raced. What year was I in? I instinctively started worrying about whether I'd done my Latin homework, because back in 6th grade, he was the only teacher I'd cared about doing well for. My disorientation was even worse because Mr. Brunner looked exactly as he had back then, being secretly immortal and all. You teach here now? I asked. Just filling in as a substitute. The corners of his eyes crinkled. Your stepfather recommended me. You know Paul? I tried to remember when the two of them might have met. The Battle of Manhattan, maybe? I'd been too busy at the time to keep track of who everybody was meeting, fighting or killing. Mr. Brunner chuckled. Of course, Paul is an excellent teacher. He got me on the substitute list for the district. So you're watching over a possible demigod at AHS? I wondered who it might be and why they hadn't started manifesting their powers until high school. Molly Leary was always constructing Lego murder bots in the engineering lab and sending them into the halls to terrorize people. Potential child of Hephaestus? No, Percy, Mr. Brunner assured me. The only demigod I know of at AHS is you. I simply like to teach from time to time to keep my skills fresh. He sounded as if he meant it, though how anyone could enjoy being a substitute teacher was beyond me. That was like volunteering to be the target on an archery range. He set his cup down on a stack of papers. I wasn't expecting you until later in the day. Dr. Sharma has you for 4th period, yes? Ancient cultures. My favourite. I found myself smiling. I couldn't believe my good luck. This was even better than talking to Dr. Sharma, because with Mr. Brunner I could tell him everything. I'm so glad to see you, I said. I need... Just a moment, my boy. He winced as he shifted in his wheelchair. I rode here this morning on the Long Island Railroad. My back legs are killing me. Since you're here, would you mind watching the door while I get out and stretch? Oh, sure. Because why not make things more awkward? I kept lookout as Mr. Brunner undid his wheelchair. The blanket-covered fake human legs swung sideways like car doors. He grasped his armrests and slowly pulled himself out of the chair, which was a magical storage space big enough to contain his true form. First the front legs of a horse emerged, then the full body of a magnificent stallion, until standing before me was the centaur Chiron, activities director of Camp Half-Blood, immortal trainer of heroes, his head nearly brushing the fluorescent light fixtures. He clopped around the classroom, flicking his tail, shaking his back legs, and knocking the student desks out of alignment. Nobody came down the hall. I'm not sure what I would have said if someone did. Oh, hi, just lounging in the doorway of this classroom. Those clopping sounds, I don't hear anything. What bothered me more was the way Chiron limped on his back left leg. I'd noticed it for the first time last summer, which makes me sound super inattentive, I know. In my defence, every summer I'd attended Camp Half-Blood, I'd actually spent 90% of my time not at camp, running around the world on quests, trying not to die. I'd never focused on how Chiron walked when he was in centaur form. Also, too, I was in fact super inattentive. Once I noticed the limp, I kind of fixated on it. It gradually occurred to me that the guy didn't use his wheelchair just as a disguise. For him, walking was painful. Sometimes he needed a break. Once I spotted him with a leg brace. Another time I stumbled across him in the Apollo cabin, getting some herbal lotions to rub on his knee. Finally, I'd asked Annabeth what the deal was. She'd looked at me like she wanted to whack me upside the head with a 2x4 piece of DUH. That was Hercules' fault, she said. He wounded Chiron in the leg with a poisoned arrow. Why? It was an accident. He was aiming for another centaur. Stupid Hercules, I grumbled. Wait, you mean this happened thousands of years ago and it hasn't healed yet? It can't heal, Annabeth said, and I can't believe you're just noticing. Chiron is in agony every day of his eternal life. He does a good job hiding it, but the main thing that keeps him going is that he cares about us, the demigods he trains. Wow. After that, I'd felt super guilty. Not once had it occurred to me that Chiron was in pain. I'd never asked him how he was feeling. I'd never sent him a card on Centaur Appreciation Day. I hadn't told him thank you for putting up with me nearly enough times, and after more than 5 years, I felt awkward saying anything at this point. Chiron stretched his back leg one more time. He winced, gritting his teeth. Yes, much better, thank you. From his tone, I guessed it wasn't much better. Chiron backed into his wheelchair, closed the fake leg hatch, and once again he was Mr. Brunner, a mild-mannered substitute teacher with a tweed jacket and a half-eaten oat bagel. He straightened his tie. "So, Percy, was there something I could help you with?" On one hand, I felt bad dumping my problems on him. On the other hand, he looked like he was really interested in hearing them. Chiron had always been a good listener. Maybe he welcomed the distraction. I was nothing if not distracting. I told him about Hecate and our little situation with her broken-down mansion and missing pets. If my goal had been to make Chiron look even more pained, I succeeded beautifully. "Oh dear," he said. "Yeah, and Hecate returns Friday night?" I nodded. "How bad have we messed up?" He drummed his fingers on his armrest. "Well, I've seen worse. When Simon convinced the Trojans to let the wooden horse inside their gates, for instance, or when Salmoneus pretended to be Zeus and got his entire city destroyed. Great. At least Hecate won't destroy all of New York. She owns property in Manhattan, so that borough's probably safe." I guess my expression must have been pretty dismal. Chiron cleared his throat. "Let's not dwell on worst-case scenarios. You say Annabeth and Grover are helping you?" "Yeah. Well then, I have full confidence. Together you three are a powerful team. Do you have a plan?" My first thought was Hecate's torches. She said we could use them in case of emergency." "No!" Chiron yelped so loudly I almost fell over. No, Percy, Hecate's torches raise ghosts to do her bidding. At this time of year, what you call Halloween, the torches become even more powerful. You cannot risk it unless you want an army of angry spirits to tear you apart. Why Hecate would tell you to use them, I can't imagine, unless she is trying to test you. I gave that some thought. If a god was going to test me, I would have preferred multiple choice. Then again, Hecate was all about multiple choices. She stood at the crossroads, waiting to see which direction you would take. Maybe it wasn't a coincidence that she'd left a strawberry-flavoured experiment behind, with a loose lid, at that, to tempt Grover, or that she'd suggested I use her torches, or that she'd mentioned her tantalisingly dangerous library, which Annabeth would be exploring right about now. A feeling of dread crept down my back. But why would Hecate set us up to fail? When it came to her pets, she was the original helicopter mum. She wouldn't want to lose them. As for letting us wreck her mansion, it seemed like a pretty convoluted way to get her insurance company to pay for a remodel. "Okay, no torches then," I said. "I've been attacked by enough spirits of the dead for one lifetime." Chiron's expression darkened. But not all ghosts are souls of the departed, Percy. Some of the worst ghosts can be memories, regrets, the choices we've made or failed to make. Great. I remembered the flickering blue image of the child on the bicycle. I wondered if that had been a departed soul or a living memory, or if it mattered, because either way it had freaked me out. "So, plan B," I said. "I went by Eudora's office to ask for her help, but she's been in hiding ever since Hecate showed up." Chiron nearly choked on his bagel. "The Nereid Eudora, she's here." Silly me. Assuming all the immortal beings who passed through my school knew about one another, Alternative High was like ancient Greek Grand Central Station. I told Chiron about my questionable, helpful counsellor, and how she'd made herself scarce when the triple-headed trick-or-treater appeared. Chiron sipped his tea. "That must have been a shock for Eudora." "Those two have history." "It's not my story to tell," Chiron said, "but yes, a complicated history. Having to do with choices, I guessed. Regrets." He looked at the remains of his breakfast as if they had personally disappointed him. "Something like that. Do you have a plan C?" I was going to ask Dr. Sharma what she knew about Hecuba, maybe get a lead on where she might go, but since you're here... Chiron relaxed his shoulders. "That I can help with. Hecuba was the last queen of Troy. When the Greeks took the city, they killed her children and enslaved her. Hecuba despaired and threw herself into the sea. She would have died, but the goddess Hecate took pity on her and turned her into a dog. I made a mental note never to earn Hecate's pity. Being a dog didn't sound like much of a consolation prize. "So, would she go back to the sea?" I asked. "I doubt it," Chiron said. "For Trojans, bad things always came from the sea." His eyes lit up. "Like the Greeks. Hecuba hated the Greeks. She still would. She might be looking for opportunities for revenge." "Please don't tell me she went to Greece." "She wouldn't need to," Chiron said. "She would follow the nearest scent. There are many enclaves of Greek immigrants nearby. Why, we're presently in one." Alternative high school. Chiron showed his immense patience by not laughing in my face. "No, my boy, Astoria. This part of Queens has a huge Greek community." "You mean Hecuba might be around here right now?" Somehow, this seemed both reasonable and annoying, that the dog I was hunting for would be, like, right next door, chewing on some poor dude with Greek heritage. "That is one possibility." Chiron said. If so, she will be hunting at night, looking for mortals to scare to death, casting spells of mischief, causing bad luck. You must find her. I shuddered. I guess I can go back to the mansion, get her treats, and search Astoria tonight. Treats might work, Chiron agreed, but there is another possibility. You said you called on Mrs. O'Leary last night. When she started following a scent, where did it lead her? Straight to the nearest hell puppy, I said, which was kind of sweet, but also not so helpful. On the contrary, my boy, female hellhounds have a strong maternal instinct. Mrs. O'Leary proved that. While Hecuba is no longer human, she is still haunted by the deaths of her children. She would be very, motherly in her own way. This puppy of yours might prove useful. A plan started to form in my head. It was a strange sensation, actually having some idea of what I was going to do. That's really helpful, I said. Thanks, Mr. Chiron. The old centaur smiled. You may call me Brunner or Chiron as you wish, Percy. I am happy with both identities. Unfortunately, even if you find Hecuba, you'll still have to locate Gale and fix the mansion. So many problems, so little time. That's kind of my life story, I said. I don't suppose you could write me a note, get me out of school for the rest of the day. Chiron frowned. Now, Percy, you know you have a quiz in Dr. Sharma's class. We can't let you miss that, can we? Suddenly, I remembered the downside of having Mr. Brunner as a teacher. He believed in me, which meant he believed in my grades. He always insisted on me trying my best. No, sir, I mumbled. I guess I'll wait until after school. Excellent, he said. Run along to class. I know you will do well in the test. Chapter 13. I get extra time and candy corn. I did not do well. Not on the quiz, not on the rest of my school day, not on getting back to the mansion after swim practice. What is it about guards on the subway? I was on the W train halfway to Union Square when Hecate decided to check up on me. Fortunately, there weren't many other people in my train car. Nobody else seemed to notice the bench across from me turning black like a withering plant, then the whole side of the train melting into a rippling, bubbling mirror of shadows. The three beastly faces of Hecate emerged from the gloom, the horse, the lion, the dog, all staring at me with their blazing eyes. "Did you try to call?" Hecate asked, her voice whinnying from the horse's mouth. Still, nobody else on the train reacted. I was reluctant to answer the goddess, since I would probably look like I was talking to myself. On the other hand, it wouldn't be the first time New York commuters had seen that on the train. I really needed to start carrying a dummy pair of headphones with me. Then people would think I was just talking to a friend and not communing with otherworldly forces. "No, I didn't call," I said. "Why?" "I heard you speak my name," said the lion, "more times than usual. Is everything all right?" I should have known better than to use her name so often. That tends to get a god's attention. It's the divine equivalent of a butt dial. Now I'd have to be careful what I said. If I lied, she would probably sense that. But I also couldn't tell her the truth. The truth would get me trampled faster than a raging strawberry goat monster would. "Oh, sorry," I said. "I was just talking about you in my ancient cultures class." Her 6 fiery eyes burned into my soul. "I see," the dog's head growled. "I am considered ancient now, am I?" "No, I mean—" The 3 heads laughed, which was really disturbing. "Relax, Percy Jackson." Hecate morphed into a middle-aged woman in a black dress, her default evil principal look. She sat on an obsidian throne in the middle of her shadowy gateway, munching from a bag of candy corn. "I am just teasing you." "I knew that." I forced a smile. "Ha ha! Everything is fine at home then?" she asked. Evasive manoeuvres, I thought. I couldn't lie. I couldn't tell the truth. Maybe I should follow the lead of the third door knocker and spout something random like "Fabfrabajodusion." "Just heading back now," I said. "Wow, Hecuba and Gale sure love their walks. They really surprised us the first night." Hecate chuckled. "Yes, my little babies." She bit off the tip of a candy corn with her sharp white teeth, which made me think of guillotines. "I hope they're not being too much trouble." "How's the trip going?" I asked, changing the topic all subtle-like. "Where are you today?" When in doubt, I found the best way to distract someone is to get them talking about themselves. That seems to be a source of endless fascination for selves everywhere. "Ireland," Hecate said, helping them prepare for the Puka festival. "They have an entire night of torch dancing, obviously in honour of me, though they've gotten their traditions a bit mixed up over the millennia, bless their hearts." "Right," I said, "with candy corn?" "Oh no, I brought that with me," Hecate said. "I always travel with a bag of candy corn." This was horrifying, but somehow not surprising. "Glad you're having fun," I said. "Hey, just curious, you would never, I stopped myself. I'd been thinking about Chiron's comment that maybe Hecate was setting us up. Now that she was right here in front of me, I was itching to confront her about that. I'd almost asked, "You would never want us to fail, lose your pets and destroy your house, would you?" That was a Percy-level bad idea. It would lead to questions about how we had actually lost her pets and destroyed her house. "I would never do that," Hecate asked. I needed to pivot, turn my question into something that would help us, not get us killed more quickly. You would never consider extending your trip, would you? A couple of days, an extra week?" Hecate narrowed her eyes. "Why would I do that?" I felt like I was sweating into my bench, melting into my own puddle of shadows. "Well, you're having such fun. You don't get much time off. I imagine there is a lot of festivals you won't be able to make." A tense moment passed. I waited for Hecate to snap her fingers, teleport to her mansion, learn what was going on, and then come back and hurl my W train straight to Tartarus. She laughed. "So, you do like my pets. I knew they would grow on you. Don't worry, Percy Jackson. If you do a good job this week, I will put you on my list of preferred pet sitters for the future." I mean, yay! But I would feel bad coming home any later. I get it. Maybe just aim for Saturday morning. Friday night is Halloween, after all. It would be a shame to cut that short. We don't mind. She nibbled pensively on a candy corn. "Well, I have always wanted to attend that festival in Transylvania." "Transylvania," I nodded. I love that for you. The ritual killing of the living dead, you know. Sounds fun. They know me so well there. Plus they have yummy Curtis Kirkalex." I thought she'd said conniption fits, but I used my context clues and decided that couldn't be right, unless Hecate found Transylvanian temper tantrums tasty. "Yum," I said. "Very well," Hecate decided. "I will return on Saturday morning. Thank you, Percy Jackson. Don't mention it. And when I return, if everything isn't just as I left it..." "Oh, don't worry," I said. "Worrying is my job. I'm excellent at worrying." No lies detected, obviously. Hecate laughed. "Onward, then." She disappeared in an implosion of darkness, leaving behind her bag of candy corn, as if I needed another threat. When I got back to Gramercy Park, Grover's first comment was, "Is that candy corn?" "Yeah." I handed him the bag. "It's gross. Enjoy." As Grover chowed down, I joined him and Annabeth on the great room floor and told them about my terrible, horrible, no good, very bad goddess butt dial day. Hell puppy nope curled up in Annabeth's lap and listened. When I was done, Annabeth said, "I'm jealous. Chiron never substitutes at School of Design. You are so lucky." I imagined the centaur rolling up to advanced dressmaking with a sparkly tie, rhinestone glasses and sequins on his wheel rims. He could have totally pulled it off. "Nope," offered Nope. "I know," Grover told him, "but I don't think Percy will like that name." "Excuse me?" I asked. Grover shifted anxiously, like someone might take away his candy bag. Nope made up names for all of us. Annabeth is Mum. Annabeth beamed. "Oh, what a good dog." "I'm Chew Toy," Grover said. Then, before I could laugh, he added, "You're Alley Boy." Annabeth kept a straight face. "It's perfect." "Seaweed Brain is bad enough," I grumbled. "Alley Boy sounds like some sort of D-list superhero sidekick." "The Adventures of Mum, Chew Toy and Alley Boy," Annabeth mused. "We should pitch that to Hollywood." I wasn't sure if she was kidding, which always made me nervous. "Anyway," I said, "I managed to buy us a few more hours. Hecate won't be back until Saturday morning." "That's good." Grover gazed forlornly around the damaged house. He'd done what he could to clean up the debris. The front door was covered with a plastic shower curtain. The knockers had been wrapped in paper towels and tucked in a cardboard box. Most of the broken furniture had been cleared away, but there wasn't much he could do to hide the broken stained glass windows and the massive goat hoof craters in the walls. Maybe if we find some duct tape. "One thing at a time," Annabeth reminded him. "Tonight our mission is Hecuba. She's the biggest, most dangerous pet. If Chiron is right, she'll be out there hunting Greeks as soon as the sun goes down." She turned to me. "I spent all day in the library, and I learned, well, pretty much what Chiron told you, which is annoying since I had to translate most of the information from Greek and Latin." "On the bright side," I said, "you didn't turn into a flaming purple armadillo." "Not yet," she agreed, "though some of the books in that room." She shook her head in amazement. "I could swear they were calling to me, urging me to read them." "I'm glad you didn't," I said. "I fear Hecate may be tempting us to make bad choices." I told them what I'd been thinking about the strawberry concoction, the library and the torches. I wasn't sure if the moray eels were supposed to be a temptation, unless they were a temptation for me to strangle a moray eel, in which case, well played, Hecate. Grover sniffled. I appreciate you saying all that, Percy, but this is still my fault. I was weak. Hey, I patted his knee. One thing at a time, G-Man. Like Annabeth said, let's get over to Astoria. Lots of Greeks there for Hecuba to terrorize. Maybe we'll get lucky. Annabeth nodded. We'll bring her leash, lots of treats and chew toys. Nope, said Nope. He means actual chew toys, not me, Grover explained to him. Though I'm going too. Nope. And we'll bring the puppy, I said. Maybe Hecuba will be feeling maternal. Nope must have understood. He wagged his tail with such excitement. He peed in Annabeth's lap. She took it better than I would have. She just sighed and moved the dog to the floor. Let me change my pants, then we'll head to Queen's. And if the treats don't work? Grover asked. Or the chew toys? Or the pup? I tried to think of an optimistic answer. The three of us would be scouring New York for a hellhound we couldn't fight, and that we would have to convince to come home. And she would definitely smell us coming because we all reeked of hell puppy pee. I'm not sure, I admitted. Then I tried the words that would come back to haunt me in a not-so-fun, non-Halloweenish way. Alley boy, we'll have to figure something out.